I'm here today to try to talk a bit about the course I'm teaching. It's called Finance in the Sustainable Enterprise. I'd like to talk briefly about the course, but also a little bit about why I got into this. I'm a strong believer that finance has a lot to offer to the world. And for that belief, I am extremely thankful to the training I got at Chicago. On the other hand, I'm also a strong believer that finance has not been utilized for the good of humanity. And it's been utilized well for Wall Street, for the private sector, for it to become as efficient and understand issues as possible, as deeply as possible. But I also do believe that finance has not been understood well by the rest of the population or rest of the people in society. So I teach this course largely motivated by being very ambivalent about markets on the one hand and public goods on the other hand. And I grew up in India where I struggled with the role of government and how large it was. And then I grew up in America, which is a complete opposite of what India was. And I used to wonder about both extremes. And I think finance is closer to the Western view of corporations and businesses in society. But I think finance has a lot to offer to issues of public concern that go beyond the corporate concern. And so a bunch of students over the years have been interested at Michigan in sustainability. And it's something that sounded pretty bizarre to me about 10 years ago, and I was wondering why anybody is even talking about sustainability, and I started thinking about it. And I've been very influenced, and I must say this, very influenced for my Chicago training of markets, which I think has been awesome. And any finance I know is because of the time I spent there and thought about issues thereafter. But also to economists like Amartya Sen, Solow, Kenneth Arrow, Partha Dasgupta in particular from London, who have made me rethink a lot of issues that I took for granted. And I just love teaching this course because it's the most challenging thing to do. It's very easy, I believe, these days to confine yourself to the goals of a corporation, and very easy to say we are maximizing shareholder wealth, but it's much more difficult to actually deal with the reality and see if this model really works. What also kind of concerns me is that sustainability is not about a corporation going on, it's about society going on, and it's a much more difficult issue to tackle. And unlike what we'd like to believe, the invisible hand works very well if there are markets, but it doesn't work at all if there are no markets. And the knee-jerk reaction of a markets-oriented person is markets will solve all problems. Well, they don't. Markets have to exist before they can solve any problems. So these kind of struggles made me start doing this course. So if you want to think about this course has a backdrop of environmental issues, largely because I think as a finance person I'm very numbers oriented. So the fact that we can scientifically measure the impact of what bad things we do as in the process of producing something good, which are called externalities, largely ignored in the Western world. And I think that's very conveniently so, because you don't want to worry about something that you don't want to worry about that's actually hurting you as an individual company. I think those issues are scientifically shown, and if you listen carefully and read carefully to what the scientists have to say based on data, we are creating a lot of bad while creating good. So I think if you're a true economist, you really, and a finance person, you won't ignore the fact that you have a kind of moral obligation, if I may, to at least live by your own principles and not to treat conveniently things that impose costs on you as a company to treat them as free goods. And the environment is a classic example of how markets cannot exist, need to be created, and hopefully we will follow the lead of Europe, the rest of the world that's far more concerned about the environment than we are. And with the environment as the backdrop, you can think about this course as trying to deal with maximizing shareholder wealth, retaining the influence of markets, and solving bigger problems. And so you can think of it as valuation, good old finance, but using it in a constrained way. It's not the Wild West anymore. And so that's what the passion I have for this. This is far more difficult than teaching any finance class. I can walk into and pretty much teach any finance class, as I said, due to my Chicago training. But teaching this is not only rewarding, it's very difficult. And I think there are two broad issues, right? One is efficiency, one is equity. And a lot of people on the sustainability slide do not understand finance, are actually pretty soft, and just keep repeating the fact that we need to care about the environment or about society or the underprivileged. But I think they do not understand finance, and it's an irony that the finance people who understand it do not know its power, seemingly, and people who care about broader issues do not seem to understand finance and how powerful it is. So this course is trying to take every issue that you can think of that society is worried about right now and use the tools and techniques finance has to offer to try to address them. The idea is not to solve a problem. I think that's a misnomer, and business school students still believe that they're coming to school to try to solve problems. No, it's a framework. It's a way of thinking. And what I love about finance is you cannot mess with things. You cannot just talk. You cannot, if I may say so, BS for a long time without showing what you're talking about. So think about a spreadsheet, for example, and I use them all. This is the most difficult finance course, is trying to force you to put your assumptions and so that you can prove each other wrong rather than prove each other right. So I believe this class uses finance tools to solve much, much more difficult societal problems and do it the right way.